everyone? Thank you all so much for being here today. As you can probably tell by the title of this video, we're comparing E92 BMW M3 versus the BMW 135i. I gotta be honest with you guys, this is my first time in an M3 E92, and I've only driven my brother's new 135i like 2 or 3 times, so both of these cars are super new to me, so you'll get that really unbiased kind of rookie first impression here. So that might be good, might be bad, I don't know. But first impressions here in the M car, the steering is like extraordinarily precise. It's kind of heavy, good weight to it, but like right off center, it turns very well. And I guess that's just a characteristic with like the M cars, because I've driven 3 Series and I've never really been that impressed with it. So I don't know what the differences are there, but the M car feels so crispy in the turn-in.
I'm Ryan. I'm Jake's older brother, John.
Yep. Friend.
Friend, good buddy, secondary brother. So in the M3, and I don't know exactly what the cause is, because both of these cars are hydraulic power steering units, but the steering in this car is significantly heavier than the M3. They both feel it gives good feedback, but the actual steering in this car feels a lot less assisted than the M3 does. But I can tell you that we caught some windies a second ago, and I don't have any complaints about the way the car feels. It feels very direct, very alive in the corners, actually. But my car definitely can scare you coming out of the corners more. That extra torque, like in the M3, I feel very confident in, like, I can stomp on the throttle mid-corner, and the way the delivery is so smooth that you can comfortably do that. But in this dead stuff, I hope I didn't hit it. I didn't. In this, you stomp on it mid-corner, and especially since I have an open LSD, so when it does want to let loose, it's not as predictable as something with a proper LSD.
Okay guys, so aside from the steering being on point, power, and I've heard this in other videos, people talk about how this car doesn't have that just like insane punch, but it revs really high. So it's kind of like, it's a really racy engine, so it just keeps going, it keeps going, it keeps going, it keeps going, it keeps going. And it just revs and revs. And I'm the kind of guy who prefers that kind of engine. I know some people prefer your car to rev to like 5,000 RPMs and have tons of torque. But this thing, it just revs out, and it's so beautiful. It's smooth and revs high. I really like it. Now, for being an M car, it's surprisingly comfortable. What do you think?
Yeah, it's
I mean, it's super quiet in here. We don't really got any like weird noises. Okay, we'll kind of test the turn in. Oh, I got traction control kicking in a little.
If this had like the M bushings, which the 1M, the M version of this car, you couldn't get it in a dual clutch, which is kind of a bummer, but it had essentially the exact same suspension components as the M3 of the same gen. So, it came with LSD, it came with the bushings have a lot less compliance, so the suspension, everything feels more precise and direct, almost like spherical bearings in place, but it's not quite that serious. So you get a good feel, but you can still daily drive it. And this is super lacking in that area. I think with those components added onto this car would be a serious contender.
All right, guys, we're coming to a stop here. I'm gonna give you guys a little pull with the windows down, and hopefully you guys can hear it. We're in first gear. So, I hope you guys can hear it as well as I can. It sounds so good. It really does. This V8's awesome. Actually, that was probably the first time that I noticed the shifts weren't, and I'm being really nitpicky, I'm not like a dual clutch snob or anything, but they weren't instantaneous. I mean, they were so fast, but like there was a really small delay there. Nothing I would ever complain about if I owned this car, though. It was still really nice.
most aggressive settings that it can be in right now. And relative to the M3, so the M3's got a power button which changes throttle response and power delivery, and it's got the drive logic, whereas I only have a sport button which works my shift logic or the drive logic, and I don't really have a sport, like a power button, if you might. Putting the shifter into sport mode in this is supposed to be like akin to, it's supposed to change the throttle response, but this still does not feel in any way as aggressive as like the M car. I think with a proper tune and maybe a handful of suspension bits, this could feel like it was just meant to be a true M car. But when I get on it in this, it's not anywhere near as in your face as the M3. And I like that about the M3 a lot.
So I have a bit of experience these days with the different BMW like infotainment systems. I guess this car is a little bit dated now, but I quite like it. I think it works pretty well. Navigation, I mean, I like the layout of everything. It's kind of like, I'm a big fan of this, I think it's like the iDrive system or something right in front of the armrest, so you don't really have to move at all. It's right where your hand falls, so I feel like it's ergonomically correct. The driving position in this car is really good. I was afraid you might sit up too high, but you actually sit pretty hunkered down in the car. The seats, I think these bolsters are electronically adjustable, so they do hold you pretty well for stock leather seats. Materials are good in here. I mean, it's a BMW, it's a sports car, but at the end of the day, I mean, it is kind of like a 3 Series, and 3 Series are pretty comfy cars, nice cars, well made. Oh man, hookup feels good. I don't think the tires are actually too hot on this car. I think they're probably towards the end of their life, but it still feels all right.
I think they want me to fly by. For me, if there was really a complaint, which honest to God, I'm blown away by how good this car is.
Yeah, dude.
When I first got it, I like had a long list of things that I'm like, dude, in the first month or two, I'm definitely buying these things. But I mean, it's not anywhere near as bad as some of the interweb people try and complain, like, oh, massive issues with no LSD, tons of understeer. It does understeer. Don't get me wrong.
I felt it maybe a little bit in like one corner, but like by no means.
Is it awful?
No.
You know, it has to be said too about this E92 generation. This was kind of a bigger, well, I guess not the biggest step up from the E46, but this is a bigger car compared to, you know, earlier generation M3s. And if you ask me, it hides its weight really well. Usually cars that weigh 3,700 pounds plus, they don't turn in very well, and they don't feel like they're going to rotate. They feel like you're going to get a lot of push in the corners, but this one seems to rotate pretty well. I think from here we're going to pull over and we're going to flip-flop cars, and Ryan and John are actually in the 135 behind us, so they'll hop in here.
I daily drive that 135, and right off the bat, the biggest thing that I noticed, and I drove this around just a brief little bit this morning when I picked it up, in an instant difference I noticed was how much more planted the suspension of this feels. This has clearly got a more solid bushing in it. That was my biggest thing that I noticed right out of the gate.
So guys, I am in the 135 after jumping out of the M3. That car's a lot of fun. I really liked it. I don't want to like sound like I'm dogging on the car, but I was a little underwhelmed by the power. I kind of expected it to throw me in my seat a little bit harder, but still great, obviously. So initially, and I have driven this car 2 or 3 times since my brother's owned it, but initially this car, at least at lower speeds, feels faster, but it is the turbocharged engine, so you get that like low end punch, that low end torque that the M3 just doesn't give you. So maybe in the top end, the M would have it.
I think my favorite part about this over the 135, because the 135, the way the power comes on is so drag drastically different. It's got instant torque. This doesn't have much torque at the beginning, but the sound, this is just it's so perfect.
Oh, yeah.
And it just sounds so good when you're downshifting. The 135, with exhaust, the 135 could be a lot better, but right out of the gate, it's just so good. I don't know if they can hear that very well on the camera, but...
Okay, so, and I also had mentioned, and you would actually think that this might not be the case, but I feel like the M was a little bit quieter road speeds. Do you feel that way?
Yeah.
I feel like we have a little bit more wind noise in this car. I don't know. It's still comfy. It's still comfy.
It's still quiet.
It's very quiet.
Yeah.
It's maybe very minuscule.
Yeah.
This goes for both cars. In area I was disappointed. I expected the brakes to be better in both cars, actually. Especially in the M car, I had really high expectations for the brakes to just be firm, touchy, you know, really stop on a dime kind of brakes, but they just didn't feel like that. They're not, it's not, you don't feel like you can't stop the car, but it's, the pedal throw is a little too long for me. And same for this car, the pedal throw, it's just too long for my, I don't know, what I was hoping, what I was expecting.
Another big thing that I noticed, and it's probably just because this one's naturally aspirated, this has a tremendous amount more engine braking than my car does. Like when you're in first, second gear at like 4,000 RPMs, this is very like, yeah, very much more like driving the street bike almost, is what my thought was.
Which car do you think's faster?
I really don't know.
This is another thing. I expected to get in the M3 and just be blown away by how much faster it is. Because the 135 is no slouch. But if I'm being honest, I don't know if I can really say which one I think is faster or not. We need to put them next to each other. I think the 135 might have them out of the hole and the M might take it in the long run. If I had to guess, I don't know.
I don't know.
It's so hard to say. Cars are both so much fun and actually pretty similar in a lot of ways. Deborah just had an impression, and this is good to hear. So what do you think?
I feel like this car feels heavier.
Okay, and that brings me back to the point I made in the M car. I feel like that car hides its weight really well because that car's heavier than this.
Oh.
Yeah, like I think a few 100 pounds heavier. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know, that car, and that might be because I feel like you sit kind of low, so you feel like you have a lower center of gravity, so you don't feel the body roll as much, perhaps. So going through the corners, so maybe it's this car. Sorry, I keep interrupting myself. I think the M car is lowered. I think he has springs on it or something. So you bring the center of gravity down a little bit, you don't get quite as much body roll. 135i launch control. Get it. He meant 100 kilometers an hour. This thing pulls pretty good. We're back from driving the cars. Both cars are amazing, first and foremost, so our opinions don't even matter. It's just our opinions. But all right, so we're gonna go around the table. Everyone's gonna say like one big thing that they noticed that was different between the two cars, and then maybe which car they would prefer to have, I guess. But yeah, we'll do it that way.
So my one quick short thing, the M car is way more raw. The 135's got a lot more torque. That's my comparison.
Yeah.
And I would take the M3.
Okay.
And I love the torque, so M2.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Best of both worlds.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so the main thing I noticed different was the power. It felt like I wouldn't say there wasn't any power at the low end for the M3, but definitely more punchy and the 135i.
Personal revvy car.
Yeah, my personal taste, I think I would actually probably just choose the 135.
Nice.
Because I'm just a fan.
Yeah, cool. Big thing I noticed different, the turning on the M3, it feels a lot sharper. I feel like you sit lower, it just feels more planted in the corners. I like the power band, I like that rev happy style. So I'd probably take the M3. I love both cars, so it's a hard one.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I know, I don't know.
Everybody get to drive them, so it's not a really fair question to ask. But
And to be honest,
she told me earlier that she prefers the looks of the 135. She likes the
I
stuffiness
was
of it.
going to say that. I actually think I like the way the 135i looks.
Yeah, so maybe if the 135i just had that like lower planted feel that the M3 has.
Yeah, that would be like my.
If the 135 had like the 1M, the suspension.
Yeah, that's why I said that too. I felt
Yeah.
1M's like ideal.
Right, but they didn't make a dual clutch version.
Well, they
And
did,
I know as like fanboy as it sounds, the dual clutch is so good.
it is good.
Yeah.
I was impressed, and I'm a manual guy. He's always been a manual guy. This is
Yeah.
his first dual clutch car, so
Right.
I don't know. Anything else before we end this?
No, they're both awesome.
Both
man.
are
Hopefully,
awesome.
hopefully we can borrow this M3 more.
And hopefully the video captures our impressions because I think we all really love both cars.
Yeah.
But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please hit the like button if you did. Share it with all your friends and family if you want them to see it as well. And subscribe for all of our future videos. We'll see you in the next one.
Shalom.
Speed demon.
I don't know. So much fun. Both these cars are sick. And there's the cop.